The Witch in the Wood by T.H. White. Chapter 2. In Caerleon, 500 southward miles from all this music and magic, the man whom they had been talking about was standing on the battlements of his own castle with a friend. It was a different country which they looked out upon, different from the brown and purple wastes of evening where the bagpipes had played through dinner. Here the soft light flooded a green land of husbandry, and the slow river beside, which Tennyson was later to notice Sir Lancelot singing Tira Lira, wound between peaceful abbey and stately castle, while the flaming water of sunset reflected spires and turrets and penoncells hanging motionless in the calm air. The world was laid out before the two men like a toy, and they were on a high keep which dominated the town. At their feet they could see the green grass of the outer bailey. It was horrible looking down on it, and a small foreshortened man, with 2 buckets on a yoke, making his way across it to the menagerie. They could see, further off, at the gatehouse, which was not so horrible to look at because it was not vertically below them, the night guard, taking over from the sergeant. They were all clicking their heels and saluting and presenting pikes and exchanging passwords as merrily as a marriage bell, but it was done in complete silence for the two, because it was so far below. They looked like lead soldiers, like little gallows glasses, and their footsteps could not sound upon the luscious sheep-nibbled green. Then, outside the curtain wall, there was the distant noise of old wives bargaining, and brats bawling, and corporals quaffing, and a few goats mixed with it, and 2 or 3 lepers in white hoods ringing bells as they walked, and the swishing robes of some nuns who were kindly visiting the poor, 2 by 2, and a fight going on between some gentlemen who were interested in horses. On the other side of the river, which ran directly beneath the castle wall, there was a man plowing in the fields, with his plow tied to the horse's tail. The wood plow squeaked. There was a quite silent man near him, fishing for salmon, with worms, of course. The rivers were not polluted in those days. And, further off, there was a donkey giving his musical concert to the coming night. All these noises came up to the two on the tower quite smally, as though they were listening through the wrong end of a megaphone. King Arthur was a young fellow, just on the threshold of manhood. He had fair hair and a rather stupid face, or at any rate there was a dearth of cunning in it. It was an open face, with frank, kindly blue eyes, and a sort of reliable or faithful expression, as though he were a good learner who enjoyed being alive and did not believe in original sin. He had never been beaten, for one thing, so he was kind. The king was dressed in a rich robe of velvet that had belonged to his father, trimmed with the beards of 14 kings who had been subjected in the old days. Unfortunately, some of these kings had had red hair, and some black, and some pepper and salt, while their growth of beard had been distinctly uneven. The trimming looked a bit like a feather boa. The mustaches were stuck on round the buttons. The second man was much older. He had a white beard, which reached to his middle, horn-rimmed spectacles, and a conical hat, like the megaphone we were talking about. The two of them were speaking sometimes as the words came to them between listening to the evening. "Well," said the young one, "I must say it's nice to be king. It was a lovely battle." "Do you think so?" "Of course it was a lovely battle. Look at the way Lot ran, after I had begun to use Excalibur." "He got you down first, though." "Oh, that was nothing. It was only because I wasn't using Excalibur. As soon as I drew my trusty sword, they all ran like rabbits." "They will come back again," said Merlin warningly. "Let them," replied Arthur. "I don't mind them. I'll beat them properly this time, and then we'll see who's master." The old magician immediately crammed his beard in his mouth and began to chew it, as he generally did when he was put about. He bit one of the hairs right through, and it got stuck between 2 teeth. He tried to lick it off, then took it out with his fingers. Finally, he began curling his beard into 2 points like Bernard Shaw's. "I suppose you will learn sense some day," he said. "But God knows it's heartbreaking uphill work." "Oh?" "Yes," cried Merlin passionately. "Oh, oh, oh." And he was too simple to notice that Merlin was about to pounce. "Oh, well." he said. It was just luck. Very clever, repeated Merlin. How many of our Kerns got killed? I don't remember. No. Kay said... The king stopped in the middle of the sentence and looked at the magician with a blush. Very well, he said. It wasn't fun then. I hadn't exactly thought. The list, pursued Merlin remorselessly, was more than 700. They were all Kerns, of course. None of the knights were injured except the one who broke his leg falling off the horse. When he saw that Arthur was not going to answer, the old fellow went on in his bitterest voice. I was forgetting, said he, that you took some rather nasty bruises yourself. Arthur glared at his fingernails for a time, then looked up miserably. I hate you, he said, when you are a prig and snarl. Merlin was charmed. That's the spirit, he said, putting his arm through Arthur's and smiling all over his face. That's more like it. You stand up for yourself, my boy, that's the ticket. Half the reason why I got into my little mood just now was because you were asking for advice. It's the only fatal thing. And besides, I won't be here to advise you fairly soon now. What is this you keep talking about, Merlin, about not being here, and the stone and all, and that stone and all that? Oh, it's nothing, replied the magician, who was in high delight. I'm due to fall in love with a girl called Nimue in a short time, and then she learns all my spells and locks me up under a stone somewhere for several centuries. It's just a little thing that's going to happen. But Merlin, how horrible, to be stuck in a hole for centuries like a toad. We must do something about it. Nonsense, said Merlin. What was I talking about? But this maiden. I was talking about advice, and how you must never take it. Well, I am going to give you some now. I advise you to think about battles, and your realm of England, and the sort of things a king has to do. Will you do that? I will, said Arthur. Of course I will. But about this girl who learns your spells. You see, it is a question of the people as well as of the kings. When you said about the battle being a lovely one, you were thinking like your father. I want you to think like yourself and to be a credit to all this education I've been giving you, when I am just a poor old man locked up in his cave. Oh, Merlin! I was only putting it on, said the magician complacently. I did it for effect. As a matter of fact, I think it will be charming to have a rest for a few 100 years, and as for that Nimue, I'm looking backward to her a great deal. No, the important thing is this, thinking for yourself business and the matter of battles. Have you ever thought seriously about the state of your country, for instance, or are you going to go on all your life being like Uther Pendragon? After all, you are the king of this place. You are the king of the place. I haven't thought very much, Merlin. No, then let me do some thinking with you. Suppose we think of Cerberus Sanspitai. That fellow! Exclaimed Arthur. Exactly. And why do you say it in such a tone of voice? Why, he's only a cad. He goes murdering maidens and all that, and as soon as a real knight turns up to rescue them, he gallops off for all he's worth. He breeds special fast horses so that nobody can catch him, and he stabs people in the back. I'd kill him if I could catch him. Well, said Merlin, I don't think he's very different from the others. What is all this chivalry, anyway? It simply means getting rich enough to have a castle and a suit of armor, and then, when you have got them, you can make the poor people do what you like, and the only risk you run is getting a few bruises if you happen to come across another knight. It's this wretched armor that does it. All the barons can slice the poor people about as much as they like, and it's a day's work to hurt each other, and the result is that the country is devastated. Might is right, that's the motto. Berus Sans Pitai is only an example of the general situation. Look at Lot and Nentris and Uriens and all that crew fighting against you for the kingdom. Their turbulence doesn't cost them anything, and you seem to enjoy it just as much yourself. But look at England. Look at all the barns burnt, and dead men's legs sticking out of ponds, and horses with swelled bellies by the roadside, and mills falling down, and money buried, and nobody daring to walk abroad with gold or ornaments on their clothes. That's chivalry nowadays. That's the Uther Pendragon touch. And you talk about a battle being fun. I was only thinking of myself. I know. I ought to have thought of the people who had no armor. Quite. Might isn't right, is it, Merlin? Aha! Replied the magician, now positively beaming with benevolence. Aha! Aha! Ah, you're a cunning lad, Arthur. But you won't catch your old tutor like that. You were just trying to put me in a passion by making me do the thinking. But I'm not to be caught. I'm too old a fox for that. You'll just have to think the rest yourself. Is might right? And if not, why not? Give reasons and draw a plan. Besides, what are you going to do about it? What? Began Arthur, but he saw the gathering frown. Very well, he said, I'll think about it by myself. And he began thinking, stroking his upper lip where a mustache was going to be. There was a little incident before they left the keep. The man who had been carrying the 2 buckets to the menagerie came back again with his buckets empty. He passed directly under them, looking very small on his way to the kitchen door. Arthur, who had been playing with a large loose stone, which he had dislodged from one of the machicolations, got tired of thinking and leaned over with the stone in his hand. How small Curselane looks. He is tiny. I wonder what would happen if I dropped this stone on his head. Merlin measured the distance at 32 feet per second. He said. I should think it would probably kill him dead. I have never killed anybody like that, said Arthur, in an inquisitive tone of voice. Merlin was watching him narrowly. You are the king, he said. And later, nobody can say anything to you if you try. Arthur stayed motionless, leaning out with the stone in his hand. Then, without his body moving, his eyes slid round sideways to meet his tutor's. The stone knocked Merlin's hat off as clean as a whistle, and the aged gentleman chased him featly down the stairs, waving his wand in lignum vitae. And that's the end of chapter 2.